"Hey, darlings." Cold wind in S with clouds of snow and put them in her mouth. Nose through the collar short fur coat Marina ran out of the Obenergo building where she worked for almost a decade and a half and quickly ran to the minibus stop. After everything, he had done it. In order to get home before Misha returns from the place, the husband likes to go to a well-kept apartment where delicious food has already been served on the table. The voice of Marina Vladimirovna's colleague reached the woman when she was almost around the corner. "Wait." "Well," he imposed it again. The woman shuddered and stopped, however. He was incredibly punctual. "At least he'll catch the breath we sneezed. This is a real man is a disaster and a man is a tragedy. He got the job recently, and the real reason levers exist, everything could break and theoretically everything could be different. But Cram had the gift of this. It was defective, and he showed that it was broken, and that Marin's workplace also needed urgent repairs. Valerie was a victim of karma, or what to call what happened in his presence during a week of part-time work. They were left without a working water source and without a complete coffee maker. It is true that both the refrigerator and the coffee maker were repaired by himself and by Grace. But like that old joke, a residue was left due to a strange coincidence of circumstances. Marina and Valera lived in the neighboring entrances of a large multi-story building. This unfortunate circumstance from the point of view of a woman would not have affected her or her future destiny in any way if Valera had not taken. As a rule, whenever possible, he tried to help Marina with her realities, so he offered to take Marina to work or home whenever they happened to meet in the courtyard or at the entrance of the Obenergo building, like now. For example, Marina's husband is tall and handsome, the handsome Mikhail, and he is discreet, and a certain mean Valera was despised when he first saw her. Getting in the car with an unknown husband and losing her was crazy, but Marina, she explained to her husband that it was raining outside, and the new employee kindly agreed to give Misha a ride to work. He spoke critically, not embarrassed by the fact that Valera, who was nearby, heard everything and immediately hung up. Since then, Valera has tried in every way to help employees, but not everyone liked it. Although, to be honest, Marina would find it much more pleasant to return home with a clean, dry, and warm car than to shiver in a cold, crowded minibus. Sometimes she simply protested her husband's position on this issue. He was very indignant when he saw this. His wife was brought back by this incomprehensible Valera and not by an unknown minibus. "And my dear, public transport in the city has already been canceled. I was interested in looking at your wife with the brown-eyed Ron look. Otherwise, I might think that you were cheating on me with this scoundrel. It is very common for you two to walk together. That's right. You are a married woman." Marina remembered that she had been married for many years. She had been married since her student days. Her relationship with Michael has now become quite sincere. No surprises, because she simply laughed contagiously in response and shook his head. "No, you don't have to worry about this matter. My good Valerka, he can't even say that he is a useful idiot. You know, at work everything in his hands is on fire, but breaks down, and in general everything breaks down. You know, he even fixes his own car, and he is constantly fixing it, and what he gives me a ride, so thanks to him for that. Otherwise it is very possible that at least you can. Sometimes you yourself catch me at work." But Mikhail opened up and with all his appearance convincingly demonstrated that this was not about picking up his wife from work, that he is not some kind of taxi driver. He is the director. Owns small company. One could even say a company in the city at night and returning home. It is better from their point of view that Marina does not invent and somehow continues as before, and everything will be fine. Marina and Mikhail met at some event student almost years ago. It didn't seem like anything special, but the acquaintance turned into a meeting and feelings. Both were young and completely students, because many restaurants and cafes were not content with walking the streets and sitting near the kiosks with fast food. So, when Misha decided that it was time to become real adults, they somehow calmly brought the application for marriage registration to the secretary. Marina didn't even feel that this was a very solemn moment in her life. Rather, It was perceived as an inevitable stage in the development of calm people in general. Now we hardly find conflictive relationships and we can get married. At that time, Misha had already inherited an old one-room apartment from his grandfather. A residential area quite far from civilization thanks to the joint effort of two. Families were reformed, order was brought in, and the newlyweds moved into that apartment immediately after the marriage was registered. Time showed that Marina's husband was caught in a very specific way. How he managed it? He just didn't have it. Price? He didn't get any part-time job. He was looking for something to put his hand on. He didn't sit still for a minute, the whole hour, or call me, or thought about what else could be vile. Although he really doesn't know how to invest money well and everything she earns somehow slips out of her hands without much delay. But Marina, at what age did they have to learn to treat correctly? Money, but on a day-to-day basis, Misha has always been what is called a shepherd in his family. Everyone has learned that shepherding, cleaning, and cooking is exclusively a woman's job, so there is no point in interfering with the boss of the family in these matters, and their family life was going well, but not as we would like. Misha really wanted to be a father as soon as possible. He kissed her on the top of her head, looked into her eyes as tenderly as only a caring man and asked, then began to persuade, and then began to make promises about how well they were all together with the baby. Marina believed and did not believe at the same time. She came from a large family, an older sister who had great happiness in the form of two younger brothers with a difference of in years with her, and she understood that she would not be easy for her, and the apartment was small, and they still didn't have much money. After all, they barely got up from the student bench, and in general, well, what kind of parents are they? But Misha was so persistent, so charming. I didn't. You will give birth. She will give birth to another. Marina's mother claimed that her daughter then the woman married much more successfully and became mother of two beautiful children. Marina tried to gradually distance herself from her mother and tell her that it would be good to start by getting up alone, so that she would have a place to go with the baby in case something happened. After all, the apartment belongs to Misha, and she herself doesn't have a square meter. Oh, don't make this up, Mom. I was sure that in case of emergency you would come to see us, and that our apartment was big enough for everyone so as not to spill my daughter a bowl of soup. Marina looked at her mother and smiled, even though her age was already quite advanced. A naive girl who looked at the world with wide open eyes, almost with bows in her fine braids, Marina. In those moments she gently envied her mother, left without her first husband. She raised her daughter alone for several years until she met Gina. Her second husband, Gennady, became Marina's trusted supporter. Although it is not common for a stepfather to worry too much about his stepdaughter, Marina shows the same affection to him and her siblings with all the help and respect possible, but she expects that they will drag. He didn't want to burden her with a hypothetical child if she left her husband. Mikhail usually returned from work a little later than his wife and always found the house in perfect order, accompanied by a set table. In love, that's why he didn't hold back the praise. You are my hostess, Marinaka. You are lovely. I just can't tell all the men at work that I brag about how golden my wife is. No one believes it. Marina is usually friendly. She pushed her husband aside, telling him not to fawn on him, and hugged his strong shoulders. But sometimes you'll be very lucky. Mishka will be lucky to respond. Muttering something unintelligible and feeling her back, they were both recklessly in love and enjoyed every minute they spent together. Misha would like Marina to work like that on a pin. He appreciated the comfort of the home and realized that it would collapse. It would be difficult to keep the house in perfect order and perform labor feats at work. The man reasoned that it is better to have a wife and leave him alone. Figure in the workplace and pride a Skyvax is, but Marina aspired to get a favorable position as early as she was young. The girls will be experienced, which means they had to gain this experience, so Tony would have to be. So Marina started working in local energy sales engineering, remembering her stepfather's promise, but it doesn't always go as planned. Marina became pregnant, one could say by chance. Maybe Misha would have wanted it, but here it is. I definitely haven't planned it yet, as if my husband was extremely happy with this event. Yeah, and she wasn't either. Because that's how it happens. She has to give birth. It is true that all professional ambitions and aspirations will have to be postponed indefinitely, but where to? Disappear. Misha received the news that he would soon become a strong father, as they say. The son came out better than planned for Marina. He was more impressed and tender, yes, than the girl used to Kareeler before. It was so nice to wake up lifted in strong arms of a loved one. Feel his breath on your cheek and on your lips, the touch of his lips. Misha kissed his belly, talked to the baby. An ultrasound showed that they were expecting a girl, participated in the choice of a devotee of the child. And then it changed. Then Marina's world just fell apart. One day, she returned to her husband's house. She arrived early at the prenatal clinic and saw her husband coming out of the driveway of their own house with his arms around a long-legged girl, and the frivolous nature of their relationship left no other options for interpretation. Mikhail hugged this girl a little shorter than Tali and praised her flirtatiously. Round, lush buttocks, pats on the neck and what? That's what Marina told her. She simply stood paralyzed on an uncomfortable bench in the adjacent entrance, where she sat a minute ago to calmly look for the keys in her bag. She wanted to. I fell to the floor and I did not do it. Seeing this couple, the image he saw was forever etched in his brain. A strong, tan man in a bright red t-shirt demanding decency pressed against a girl in a mini dress. Shame. For some reason in those moments Marina wanted more go unnoticed, as if it had been she who had done something reprehensible and not these two lovers. Then a small yellow taxi jumped into the entrance. Mikhail's companion kissed him for the last time, dove into the cabin. He raised his head and looked around him as if he were checking if anyone had seen him. Of course, his eyes saw his wife sitting literally dozens of meters from him. Misha was breathing heavily in the air, as if she suddenly became incandescent at that very second. But Marina, who was looking at him without looking. He got up. He got it very quickly. None of them knew what to do now. The young wife was new. But apparently Misha thought that he would never be caught because he didn't even have time to compose something plausible. But there was nothing to do. Upon being caught, the man decided not to avoid the conversation of a light spring. With his step, Misha approached Marina as if nothing had happened. It never happened. Apparently he was completely calm, and only the long experience of living under the same roof made Marina understand that the man was nervous about the fact that she saw their conversation, which is why she turned out to be wrinkled and somehow incomprehensible at first. Minutes. Marina didn't even know what to say. But the boss silently listened to an excuse that he had been wrong about everything and that now he was going to explain everything to her. But then instead of attacking him with accusations, she started crying. She didn't know how it happened, but the words flowed as if they were alone. All the work to do, without even having the strength to get up, and Misha was next to his Marina. In a low whisper, to her husband, she seemed to speak with a normal voice. It seemed that she didn't have one. Enough strength and breath to speak with a normal voice. But one day it all ends and Marina realizes that despite the warm night, she was already frozen. This means that what is happening is not in the interests of the child she is carrying. She needed it. Leave here and stay with Misha under the same roof after everything she saw. The girl was not going. She was just thinking about how to get home. Her mother chose the option. The taxi quickly called a car and left, not paying attention to the fact that Mikhail was definitely yelling at his mother, and why she had to tell him what was the reason she decided to leave her husband. She was allowed to stay. She did not imply with words or actions that she was superfluous, but Marina still clearly felt out of place. Falling asleep on the guest sofa in the large living room, the young woman cried. What would happen to her now? How she would have raised the baby, and in general, what kind of future life awaited him? Why didn't Misha do this in the morning? Marina woke up to some voices. They were very loud and arguing, and clearly in a high tone. Marina immediately recognized her husband's voice. Yesterday? They want to hurt her even more. I love her. Came stupidly from behind the kitchen door as my husband's voice. I love her more than my life. I acted stupidly. I agree, but I can't fix it. Anything in the past. May Marinka give me a chance. I don't want to. I can't. I won't let her go. Apparently Mikhail even cried. No, no, she won't let that happen. To her. She would not forgive him for everything he had done. She was above everything. But her own legs carried Marina to the kitchen. She wanted to see the man she still loved very much despite everything. So Marina and Mikhail reconciled. Thanks for the help. From relatives and, in addition, with difficulty, Misha's parents also joined the scandal, demanding that their son stop behaving in this way and never offend his wife again. Although it was clearly visible that the man himself was no longer over there. Happy to have found a lover and been seduced by. Easy access was finally restored only with the birth of Miroslava's daughter. They even named the girl in honor of the fact that Marina forgave her husband only on the condition that Misha's case was the first and the lastly. Marina promised not to tolerate this. It seemed that the crisis was completely overcome in a few years that passed quickly. Misha earned money for a mortgage to expand her living space and not to commit in any way to visits to cafes and restaurants, traveling various times abroad and spoil their little world with a visit to Disneyland, the true dream of every child. Thus, Misha and Marina's family boat weathered the storm of life before Marina had time to go to work and start functioning properly. When it became known that there would be a new addition to the family, this time Marina really wanted a child thanks to her. Already had a daughter, Misha also did not hide that he would like to be the father of a small child. But he accepted any option. In general, he got along well after the story and agreed with his wife on much of the problems. In a word, he was simply the ideal first-time husband. Marina was tough. Controlled by his wife because he was simply afraid to trust Misha, the woman could not believe that a man was capable of doing something so strong the first time and forever abandoning some reasons for his relationship with his wife. Or she simply realized that in reality he had made the biggest mistake of his life. But he was not seen in any reprehensible act. On the contrary, Mikhail brought flowers and small gifts to his wife, helped with his little daughter, always kept in touch by phone. And he didn't do anything with Marina. Nervous while Marina was on maternity leave, and mastered the art of making milk porridge. Mikhail decided that his family should live better and therefore should not rest on its laurels and need to earn money. At first, his best friend's capital was invested there, but then Misha bought his friend's share and began to live as a teacher when his second son, Vadim, was born. His earnings already fed the whole family very well. He could allocate money to what his wife asked for. Although Marina was never greedy and did not force her husband to spend everything on his personality, in his new apartment the most modern appliances appeared in the garage. Now it was not a national car, but a used foreign car. And the whole family began to dress much better. She herself relaxed a little only when the children had already gone to school, and who goes to kindergarten only at that moment. She stopped thinking and tormenting. And who is Misha with? Is he burning somewhere in the arms of a beauty sensual and? She just won't know. In general, the family life of Marina and Mikhail never entered its channel and flowed through it, sometimes rolling on small underwater pebbles. There were no serious contradictions or, most importantly, they did not have quarrels, but this feeling of stagnation of the swamp that tormented them. Sometimes it did not go away in the face of some advances. Maybe if nothing changes, this is also not so good, and changes are needed in the person of his responsible stepfather Gennady. Finally kept his promise to find an excellent job for him. Stepdaughter. The place from a location point of view was really excellent. About salaries at Obenergo, there were legends in their circle for a long time, and the young woman gladly moved to work in a new place. Immediately began to earn more. and so much so that Misha even whistled when he briefly showed her his salary. That I withdrew today from an ATM, so I decided to give him an unusual gift. Well, now you're an oligarch and you can't say anything. Strictly speaking, on your birthday, what can we do with you? I wanted to give you a little souvenir, and nothing? Seriously, but I still don't know if you will accept this gift from me now, considering you also earn quite a bit. With these words, Misha opened her bag and took out a white envelope without any identifying inscription or signs. Please tell me what you thought you would get from me as a birthday gift. I allow you to dream that Marina snuggled closer to Misha and began to list out loud what she had received before or what she wanted to receive from him. But everything happened, and not everything was the same again, Misha exclaimed from time to time. Just squint every time your wife mentions another option that isn't correct. He said it over and over again until Marina exhaled in mock offense. Well, then I have no more ideas, and she really ran away. Of all the options, and named a variety of things that only he could think of, from cars to new appliances, but all this turned out not to be what Misha planned to give him, which is hidden in a simple white envelope. What are you going to give her soon? After all, the holiday is the day after tomorrow. Do you want to know it in Lowy? Misha asked in a hoarse voice, and that timbre gave Marina goosebumps. After all, your husband is the best person in the world. Of course I want to. She hasn't denied it yet. She began to carefully observe her wife's reaction to the envelope. Marina took out a colorful gift certificate to buy at the Mekhov store. He hugged her waist. This is a gift for my most beloved woman in the world, Marishka. You are my queen. I love you so much. Then in that second Marina felt really happy, probably not in vain. She even once forgave her husband. She and Misha still managed to become a personal family. Now Marina was wearing a fur coat that she had chosen for herself. In the gift shop, and to work, and right on the way out, she was proud that her beloved husband had given her such a gift, and she gladly listened to the gossip about the products in the department. Of course, their spouses did not give them such gifts. So that Marina had something to be proud of, the only one she seemed to have. No matter what Marina was wearing, she usually greeted the woman warmly. Although he greeted everyone warmly and invited her to get into his car, which was often already hot when Marina left, they got down to business, where they dispersed through their apartments to meet again at night. Marina herself saw Valera simply as a colleague, not even as a friend, but because it must be admitted that it is difficult to be friends with a person in whose presence the entire team breaks down, even mobile phones or printers, and have barely begun to act. A reddish and unattractive-looking boy entered the room, but after getting his hands on the equipment, everything went back to working like clockwork. With this strangeness of his, they laughed and made fun of each other. On top of that, she has no years to make fun of a person like that. Maybe he himself is not happy with this property. Who knows? Salt in the wound. Since Misha communicated quite closely with Marina's colleagues, this somehow happened after several corporate events to which the organizers invited workers with their loved ones. Then she learned about Valera's peculiarities and did not miss the opportunity to hurt him in front of his wife, in any conversation and on any occasion. At first, Marina asked a direct and diligent question, drawing attention to how bad Valera is. You didn't even let him drive calmly in the car instead of pushing around in the minibuses. We are doing something wrong, Mishka. Marina's husband's first impulse was to pretend that nothing had happened, and he himself did not know what his wife was talking about. But then he was ashamed and told what Marina heard from him. I wasn't expecting any of this. What if you decide to get revenge on me for betraying me and choose Valeric just for that? What if it's not a character? He's madly in love with you, Marinka. Don't you see? Number? Wow, he doesn't have Marina's surveillance, of course. Sometimes he noticed that Valera pays a lot of attention to him, and that's why she distances herself from him. Sometimes, not to give the man false hope, but to think that she could change the law for her husband and colleague. It is very difficult to find the words. Probably the right thing to do would be to calm Misha down. Well, you know what I love. Just you, yeah. And we decided that what's in the past is in the past, right? That's why you have absolutely nothing to fear. Dear Mikhail smiled widely and hugged his wife tightly, caressed her back, passed his hands over her. Along her thighs, he kissed her closed eyes, and Marina, in the twilight of the hallway, did not see that the man's gaze was still the same, cold and insensitive, as if he were not hugging the woman he loved, but rather a kind of doll. Marina tried to take Valerie's eyes much less often than would be possible, but still living in the same house. It was difficult to avoid such gatherings. They could accidentally meet anywhere near the entrance of a store under the house, at a traffic light, or in the park, as long as such a meeting took place in front of him and Marina. She felt uncomfortable in front of the two men, in front of Valera for accepting her feelings as due and unrequited, and in front of Misha for the fact that she could not mark all the points clearly, and in relation to Valera with a single word. She was confused. Children returned from school after days. Isaac's father was home to meet every class. If Marina had time after work, she would check what was written in Mira and Vadik's notebooks and diaries. But this happened often, so there was no such desire. However, today, when she returned home, she found the children suspiciously cheerful. "Come on, admit what you did." He spoke to the children with joy and ease, at the same time that he took out the son needed to prepare dinner from the refrigerator. Vadim brought him a diary so that his mother could see it with hers. Miroslav sees only excellent grades in all subjects, who due to his age is no longer. I used the diary as an argument. I preferred to show Marina the notebooks where everything was well formatted. Very good. What more can I say? So they are so happy. What happened while the roast was cooking? Yesterday I was in the kitchen and Marina was cutting the bread. The children looked at each other and spoke to the world like the eldest daughter. Mom said that if Vadim and I finish the year well, then in the summer, we will fly abroad. Wherever you choose, you don't care. Well, why would Marinka be against it? No, she fully and completely supported this proposal and assured her children that they would immediately destroy the small kitchen with victory. And when her father was so generous with such promises, Marina had already served the steaming roast on a plate and was in a hurry to finish it. This conversation to tell the children to wash their hands. Yes, this afternoon when we came back from school, she immediately reported it to the world like this and said, "Marina, at first I thought I had misunderstood something today." Misha had go to negotiate with some of the company's wholesale outlets and have them. It was so important to the husband that all night he tried on one tie or another in front of the mirror and couldn't decide which one suited him best. So what he did this afternoon at home is not entirely clear. You will already know. I need to ask you. Marina gave the kids dinner and took care of the common household chores that every woman knows: hanging the laundry, putting the food in the slow cooker, making the shopping list, organizing the delivery. It seems nothing special, but you need to occupy your time in some way, and even with household chores. Nobody besides her. Mikhail returned from work at the usual time shortly after 6:30, tenderly kissed his wife, exchanged a few words with the children, paid tribute to the delicious dinner, and only then Marina began to carefully question the world, saying that you ran home this afternoon. They came from school. You forgot something at home. Misha was distracted for a minute from the computer shooters he had been playing half an hour ago and answered very quickly, "Yes, imagine. I left an important document here in the table, and at work I looked for everything. It is nowhere. Well, I had to stop by here." "What are you objecting to, darling? Or is that okay?" Marina approached her husband from behind and hugged him tightly. Perhaps it is not worth remembering the events of many years ago. Perhaps it is just necessary to forget about what happened then and not throw everything by the ears. She probably would, but something did not leave her alone. Maybe it was because she clearly remembered how yesterday she personally rummaged through the contents of the table because she was looking for a draft there for Vadim, and that in the morning the table was clean and intact. There was no yes and no. There will be no documents. But Misha today left for the office before her. Marina didn't say anything to her husband. What's the point of overcoming her memories, which keep her alert all the time, and don't give him a quiet life? Well, this table and this document are not yours. Was it yours, or was it not that important? He looked over Misha's shoulder to see how he skillfully controlled the little man in the game and walked over. Put the children to bed. She was convinced her wife was already in the nursery and sighed deeply, as if she were about to be caught. At the crime scene, Mikhail was one of those men who, at a rather immature age of about, understood that these were polygamous women and everything related to them attracted Misha all the time, constantly and not case by case. So he considered it completely natural for himself that, of course, he would get married. After all, it is simply necessary. But he does not stop meeting other representatives of the fair sex. He simply does not want to. That's all. Which means it will be like this. Better that his wife found out about something like that. This is unnecessary information for her. The young man's preferences were quite complex. He preferred to choose as lovers girls with rounded shapes, as they say in the body. Otherwise, if his wife Marina, even after giving birth, had a completely ideal body, in the eyes of any other man, then for him she was too thin, and in general he was already tired of Marinka. He did not want to make the mistake that many of his peers make and deny himself the attention of the fair sex just because he would be married in the R that he is not a free person. He immediately made it clear to them that he would not abandon his wife or children for any reason, but that he would certainly also pamper his mistress, because he had money for it, because Misha had successfully enjoyed the attention of women all this time, and he only managed to get me caught once, and then it was simply due to negligence that he did not do it. I calculated that I could return from illness earlier than usual and therefore to my home well. Conclusions were drawn. Forgiveness was received. Now the main thing is never repeat the same mistakes and never be caught again as stupidly as the first time. Now Marina is on her guard and the children are already quite old and intelligent. Of course, the wife cannot be allowed to start thinking about why he was at home and not in the office when Marina returned to her husband's room. A pleasant surprise awaited her there. The bedding was decorated with scattered petals. Roses are really artificial, but what does that change? It's beautiful, and there were scented candles on the coffee table. A great start to the night? Misha approached her, balancing a glass on a thin stem in his hands. There were hints of dark burgundy content, apparently. There was wine coming out of the speakers of the music center. Calm and slow music came from the woman's heart, and the woman's heart was pounding. Let me ask you to dance. The hand slowly fell to her waist, and the cup somehow instantly migrated into Marin's hand. Of course, she did not begin to deny her husband dancing with him in a romantic atmosphere. Such celebrations of life had not been allowed for a long time. One thing or another, then the children, then the parents, then themselves. In short, life will pass. Where is the romance? Where is the joy of each moment lived? Through the windows you could see the night city humming and shining with lights. Marina thought that down there was probably someone suffering and tormented now, and someone was experiencing the strongest joy in their entire life. How pain is closely linked in us and happiness is good and bad. She took a sip of the liquid from the glass, which turned out to be an excellent wine, and looked tenderly at her husband, responded to his gaze and did not lower her gaze. Then he brought his face closer to hers and kissed Marina on the mouth, but not like usually. They kissed calmly, but with demand, boldness, and insistence. The woman even felt a little dizzy, whether from drinking alcohol or from such a kiss. A discreet melody flowed from the speakers and Marina was in the seventh heaven of happiness. Her eyes looked away from the bear, who, having finished the dance, led her down to the coffee table and began offering her quick snacks like canapés. The notable thing here was that he prepared them himself. He was never distinguished by any culinary skills or even. I wish I had never learned that. Everything happens one day. The husband responded to her extra unspoken combination of products. Marina forced herself to eat a small sandwich. I had to admit that my husband's culinary talent was still far from possible heights. The products he chose for this dish were not very compatible with each other, but it's good that he thought of her and cared for her. Misha sat down next to him, and a bottle of wine appeared in his hands, from which he skillfully poured the dark liquid into 2 glasses, pronouncing a standard toast. To us, the man knocked over the bowl of the cup and grunted in satisfaction. Life was a success, Misha proclaimed pathetically as he poured another. Marina had no choice but to nod. Life was truly a success and nothing more could be said. Maybe there is someone on earth who is lucky in love. Here it is more difficult. It is impossible to deny it. But the fact that now your Misha is just an ideal husband is impossible to argue. The impromptu party went on until after midnight, just when the clock was ticking. Shining in the dark reminded 2 people that tomorrow, getting up early to go to work, it was decided to go to bed. Marina quickly carried the remains of the party to the kitchen, and Misha, meanwhile, cleaned the marital bed of decorative rose petals. In fact, bought this romantic set more precisely, for someone else, but Nastia certainly will not be offended. She herself is married, so she also has something to hide. So they will hide and try not to ruin anything so that their family life is happy, every one of them. They can continue indefinitely. Well, it happens like this. That boredom arises in the context of marriage. He saw absolutely nothing reprehensible in behaving exactly this way. Although sometimes very seditious thoughts arise in a man's head, he would have liked his Marinka to have done this to another man, because, for example, with the same Valerka from his work, he looks at her like a goat eating cabbage. Then he would have liked it, and then Mikhail began to push these thoughts away from himself. No, this is impossible simply because he is a man and she is a woman from decent families. The right to cheat on their husbands, like Nastia, who is ready to go anywhere and do anything. This is a headache for their husbands, and he needs a calm, modest, and honest person like his Marinka, so he was lucky to find her. But Nastia's husband does not, which means that he will win anyway and win. Believing in the family, he has the right. He is the breadwinner and Marie is Nan and just waiting for him. The woman clung to Misha in complete darkness and kissed his shoulder because of the unexpected tickling. Misha shivered and Marina laughed softly. She was completely happy. She didn't even think now about the fact that Mikhail could be dishonest with her, that sometimes Sammy Nina, who runs directly from work to home and from home to work, Misha managed with great difficulty to find time to meet with her lover. She recalled that the first time he screwed up because he brought the girl home, and because now that option was taboo for him. He dodged it again and again, invented new reasons for his short absence, lied and indulged. Husband in her defense that she want to get her manicure again, or that she is sitting with her friends in coffee having a cup of coffee with a cake. Misha smiled under the cover of darkness. Something like that would definitely occur to her. She was clever to match it in the morning. In Marina and Misha's family, the traditional bustle reigned. The children moved among the kitchen and the bedroom. The adults tried to have time to go take a shower, and it's okay to brush their teeth. It smelled like coffee and fresh cheesecakes that Marina had fried. An ideal family, thought Misha, resting in the corner of the kitchen. We really need to take them somewhere for a normal vacation. They deserve it. Remember what a great husband they have and a great father to kiss her husband. Marina ran out of the apartment and jumped into the elevator, which kindly opened its chrome doors for her today. She needs to get to work early since yesterday. 2 forms were left empty as soon as Marina opened the front door and ran out into the morning frost. The man immediately ran to meet me. Of course, she recognized him in the first second. It was Valeric in his own, already slightly frozen person. Good morning. Start in the car with Veterak and don't call Valera. Marina was inflexible, strictly speaking, and did not want to contradict him. She understood that they weren't doing anything wrong, but sometimes she goes to and from work with him. so there's nothing special about it. They're just there. Colleagues and even neighbors on the way to the office. Marina and Valera talked. However, as always, somehow little by little it turned out that they liked the same films, namely, French comedies of the 60s of the last century, artists, books, and etc. The young woman did not even expect that the same man could coincide so much. Taste. The husband did not support his wife in her hobbies, considering music, books, and movies as a relic of antiquity and, frankly, in bad taste. Misha used to spend a lot of time in front of the computer playing online games, and Marina already accepted this, of course. Although at first I was incredibly angry with him, as driving with Valrim was smooth and fun. He drove the car perfectly, smoothly, and without jerks. He was a good conversationalist and even gave advice on what to do at work. This or that incident, confessed to Marina. It's already happened. Sometimes it seems like someone big and invisible is always bringing the gray office building made of that old stone closer to the house. How to explain the fact that I haven't had time to enjoy this trip, said Valera Ramon when opening the car door. When the man finished parking near the Obenergo building, Valeric smiled widely and suddenly became incredibly handsome. Or Marina just thought it. Well, we agreed to call each other for you, so let's dispense with it. Take it away. Okay, Marina, but it's hard to take you if something is always happy. The woman quickly smiled, thanking him once, and ran to work as fast as she could. She still had so much to do before her boss's 5-minute deadline that there was no time to figure out how to call someone. You. Marina spent the entire first half of the day reading newspapers, without straightening her back and without raising her head, did an enormous amount of work, and finally sighed with satisfaction. I did not take the risk of losing the bonus, and I could have coffee at the buffet on the first floor and just talk. That they would soon have a new boss. Nobody knew who he was, but the entire accounting department claimed he was one of the oldest. They said he would get a promotion because the old boss Marina was always retiring. She turned a deaf ear to this office gossip. She was an amateur, snooping and spying, and savoring the personal life of colleagues behind their backs is completely beyond the limits of fiction. Therefore, it is better for her to remain ignorant about the identity. New boss until the moment he is officially will be introduced to the team. When the woman was about to start work, after the end of the lunch break, the phone rang. Marina immediately suspected when she saw the number that there was something wrong. Her mother spoke on the phone, and Marina's heart trembled. Sick voice. I felt bad. I think the temperature was between, and they measured it at the first aid station. They will pick me up with a nurse from the school, Marina explained. She is already there. Pressing the buttons in motion. No need to call an ambulance for the child. He is already on the way. No. He is coming quickly. He will even have time to get bored. Leaving. It is good to say that you are leaving even if the taxi does not want to answer your call. There are no cars. It is understandable that in the middle of the working day everyone has already left. Misha, whom you called immediately, does not answer the phone. He is busy. He's in the office or something. Marina was nervous. It took her minutes to ask her boss for free time, and the woman ran to the balcony of the building to get her bag. So we can only rely on minibuses, and they are very bad at the moment. What happened to you has no face. Valeric stood next to her, almost very close to her, and looked at her worriedly. Marina was happy with this man because few people in this world were happy with this. She explained to him in 3 words what had happened and where she was in such a hurry, and she already knew that in the end Valera would surely offer her help in this. She just couldn't do it any other way. A few minutes later, Valera and Marina were already sitting in the car and going to school for the sake of their son. She was now calm. The boy wouldn't have to wait for her for a long time. That's why Misha didn't answer the phone. Something happened. You can't be so busy with nothing to do. Busy in the office. I should have known that she would not call me, and something happened. Marina entered the school, and a quarter of an hour later, she took Vadim out of there. The boy walked with visible effort. He wanted to go to bed quickly even though there was nothing. When Valera didn't leave the house, He waited patiently for Marina to put her son in the back seat of the car and took them home anyway, by default, without even asking. Marina decided that now is not the time. The best time to say thank you, and silently she will say everything later, and a call from her husband is everything. Not only was Marina no longer angry about this, she was simply angry with him. She also talked to him when Vadim was brought to the apartment and Valera already intended to leave. The woman could not resist inviting him for a cup of coffee, but she couldn't just leave the man who helped her. In such a difficult situation, Valera looked ridiculous in comparison with the monumental and dense Misha, and timidly entered the kitchen, where the hostess was already conjuring cups of coffee. "I had to wash my hands," Valera spoke in a low voice. As if embarrassed, she entered. The bathroom and water started making noise. Suddenly a loud click was heard, and the lights in the entire apartment went off. Marina barely suppressed the urge to hit the spell with her hand. Something broke in the electricity as soon as he entered the apartment. Well, that's nothing. Right now he's going to fix his hands himself. He has golden hands. Valera, however, was already standing in front of the electrical panel, turning on the flashlight on her cell phone. She had a lot of experience in eliminating the consequences of an accident. Marina stepped aside to illuminate it. The man had a snack. With some pliers, some fine handcuffs with a Chinese lock, whose door was covered by a shield with bags, and from there something fell to the ground. He saw money, credit cards, and some other papers, many pieces of paper, crouching under the light of a flashlight. Marina looked at everything and couldn't stop. Bank cards with Misha's name printed on them. She didn't know that he had accounts in those institutions. The air dates were very recent, but he clearly remembered that it was around that time that Misha went on a business trip. The neighboring big city signed the contract and did not leave, but flew to the Turkish coast. There now we sign contracts, but the receipt of the order to receive money to pay for the hotel and others like that. That's why he returned home. Valero recently set up a hiding place here. He stood still nearby while Marina was amazed. He was turning all these papers in his hands, and did not have time to notice that the light had appeared everywhere again. Apparently the guest had adjusted the lighting. Then they had coffee in complete silence. Valera didn't even get Marina up. I looked because he did not understand her. He did not know all the NV. But he saw that for some reason Marina did not accompany him to the door. She remained sitting at the kitchen table, strictly inaccessible, and it was cold. When Mikhail came home from work in the evening, her things were already waiting for the man on the stairs, and Marina was not in the mood to speak peacefully with some biting phrases. She rejected her husband and informed him that the armed forces now knew how and where she spent her work time, and that she did not think tolerate it. He didn't even try. Making excuses previously, you always thought your pranks would remain a secret. And if he revealed himself, Marina would cry bitterly and be offended by him. I didn't expect to see her so angry and proud, turning around. I forgot how beautiful she was. Misha looked at Nari and didn't know what to say to him. On the one hand, he is completely right. Few people would like their other half to behave like that. But on the other hand, what I can say? Marina managed to notice that Mikhail was bent in half, grabbed his chest and groaned in pain, but decided that that was it. Just an acting game for the audience, like the day before when he gave her a wonderful romantic party, and she is not going to participate in his games. It would be too much of an honor for the woman to look at him one last time with a long, penetrating look and then close the door with determination. Marina was happy at least because children don't ask questions. Vadim was sleeping because Tsar was sleeping and started to feel better. Miroslava did her homework and didn't pay attention to what was happening, or just pretended don't pay attention. Who will solve this girl? I would like to talk to her so as not to think about anything with myself. But Marina did not have time to get to her daughter's room. They began to ring the doorbell in a sudden and unpleasant way. A stranger who wanted to enter the apartment pressed the doorbell button, and it didn't fall. Now Marina was already worried about the fact that I heard Vinya so loudly and piercingly. It is Misha who wants to take the leave because, after all, the apartment is shared. He really brings his lover, and now he wants to send her away with 2 children, one of whom is sick all over. He is a good father. There is nothing to say. But she will find something to tell him. Marina opened the doors, not even happy that it wasn't yet. Wow. It's not enough for you. And then she stopped. In front of her was a neighbor from the apartment opposite, and Misha Marinaka was lying in an awkward position next to her. Her feet. I saw that it was bad for a person who did not return home on the crooked threshold. Apparently the neighbor retired, and it is clear who would want to talk to the enraged hero who combed her hair that way. And Marina, what was left for some reason. The woman remembered how her husband grabbed her breast when she spoke to him, and stubbornly bad. She leaned over him, turned him around, patted his cheeks, seemed to breathe, and then ran to the apartment to pick up the phone and call an ambulance. All the subsequent events of that night merged for Mom into a dream. A fox that was spinning in the head. The emergency team arrived. They did an ECG. They declared a massive heart attack and took Mikhail to the hospital. Marina was left alone at home in the entrance, devastated, and now it could well cost later everyone. Who can guarantee that a heart attack will pass without consequences? Marina moaned softly and, leaning her heated forehead against the cold glass of the window, tears ran down the woman's face. Oh, why did she find out that Misha was unfaithful to her again? On the one hand, she didn't want to live with cheaters, and on the other hand, if he died, what would happen to her with her children? What would happen to her conscience? She can withstand the blow. Maybe she was wrong to attack him like that. As soon as she came home from work until dawn, Marina did not flinch before the young woman. 2 onwards. Opposite directions fought and fought to the death. Equal in strength of feeling, pain from betrayal and bitterness from the illness of a loved one. Mava Media. She went through such a long period of her life, and with her dignity spoiled deep in the woman's conscience, there was a wound made by the betrayal of her husband, and at the same time her conscience hurt and burned, which asked not to distance herself from Mikhail in such a difficult moment. The result of such a titanic struggle was that in the morning, barely after having sent Miroslava to school and ensuring that his son would spend the day under the control of his grandmother Marin, the hospital needed to visit Mikhail and find out how it feels. Maybe you need something. The woman was walking through the noisy cardiology hallways and didn't know what she expected and what she wanted most. For Misha to fall on his knees in front of her and apologize, promise I would never do that again. Just stay quiet and not let her share the apartment. Rewriting. Marina recognized her half before the children at the station. Plate with a number. Here is the correct door. Marina stopped for a second to catch her breath. Misha still doesn't dare. She continued to try to decide for herself what was more important to her, her own pride and self-esteem or human life. Under the cold light of the hospital lamps, inhaling the air that had disappeared forever with bleach and running water. He realized that he couldn't give up on Misha and leave him. She would help him recover, and then they would decide together what they should do. She would give Mikhail a chance to talk, and only then would she make the final decision. After all, it was she who, no matter what they say, almost killed him with her harsh words. She was already grabbing the doorknob, when suddenly I heard a voice from inside. It clearly belonged to Misha. Loudly, Marina carefully absorbed every word and felt the back of this saleswoman who she imagined was colder. It is not clear who else my feelings will be shared with. So remember, if there will be a notary here tomorrow you will accompany him and bring the documents that are kept in the office. Everything tomorrow don't forget, and don't mix anything. Marina listened very carefully to what the market woman wants say, but that was not the end of the conversation. And what kind of documents is the voice? Capricious, clearly belonging to a young woman. Marina had no doubt that she was now listening to Mikhail's mistress. Yes, nothing serious, you bring the main thing there. I bought documents for an apartment not so long ago, the same where we met. There were no options for by the bypass. I had to do it in my name. Now we have to get rid of it as quickly as possible, so she doesn't get half of it. Marina sighed deeply and began to listen to her more attentively. It's simply incredible. He also took money from the family and more than once was able to buy housing, and so the same capricious voice will not divide it, and it will not recognize it. There is no property, there is no division. I will transfer it to someone, yes, at least to you, and then I will return it to me, so this chicken will have a nose. Marina decided that today, she simply heard that no will go to Mikhail, and that it is clearly premature to forgive a person who is capable of so much evil. No, the best thing to do now. It's about trying to think with a cool head and calm down, and then a decision will surely come. There is no way it won't come. Marina went home. She didn't. On his own, as soon as he arrived at the minibus stop on his way home, he saw someone there whom he was going to meet now, and he did not expect that Valeric was sitting on a bench near his entrance, and without stopping looking at the road. The woman herself didn't know if she was happy to see you. Hello. The man was taciturn and seemed I'm very worried. Something happened to you? You were not at work today and I was worried. I wanted to come to you. I didn't even call you, but for some reason I decided it was better to go in. Marina herself did not know what to say in response. On the one hand, this is warm sympathy. It was incredibly timely, but on the other hand, I really wanted to express, share, tell. Is it possible to talk about such delicate topics with Valerie? The woman did not go up to where her mother and 2 children were waiting for her. She simply sat on the edge of the bench where Valera was sitting before and began to tell him everything about how they met Misha, how he betrayed her for the first time, how she thought about forgiving him, and about the fact that tomorrow he decided to rob an apartment right under the noses of the girls who at least could. Partly to ensure that his future Valera remained silent, he touched the zipper of his jacket with his slender fingers and was probably silent in other situations. This man would be an excellent conversationalist, but not now. But Marina needed to talk, and she held back. Talking to Valeric as if he were talking to an old friend and who completely trusts him and who has nothing of this strange and somewhat laconic person. Maybe it's wrong. Probably yes. But where could he go? Who to turn to? Who to ask for help? In this situation, Marina had nowhere to go, and the voice of Marina's colleague brought her out of her prostration, and the woman came to her senses. With you and you, everything was fine again. She looked at the dirty asphalt with it. Snow, gray, cracked, unattractive, like her life. And then they went together to Marina's apartment because she was alone. He could no longer carry on his shoulders all the burden that had been placed on them. He simply could not, and that was it. And Valera was standing nearby so quietly, one could even say modestly, as if he had been running for a minute. He appeared, making sure her mother said goodbye to her politely, looked at Valera in surprise and left. Marina collapsed again in a corner of the kitchen, and Valera stood by the window, and they talked about everything and what was happening now in the house of Marina's family, and about how Valeric lived before meeting her. It turned out that he had already been a widower for years. His wife died of peritonitis. They had no children, and he lived all this time as a child, and he really wants to help Marina in her problems. You? No, Valeric. How can I not remember the old fairy tale that I read to the children? How can you help me if Misha? He decided to fight to the end. He is very angry with me. He will not give up an inch of this apartment without a fight, and he will hide it now. What do you plan to do with Valera? Interest. Do you have any kind of plan? Marina shook her head. But what is it really? The plan was simply impressive and did not expose itself to ridicule. Not now, but later. That will not change the essence. And Valera looked at Marina with an especially long and thoughtful look, under which Marina felt. It's uncomfortable. Overnight, the woman thought it was probably ugly to leave her problems to a person like that. Yes, and now she is sitting next to him, stained with tears, swollen from crying, without the strength to even lift her head. And looking into his eyes, it is uncomfortable because Valeric, however, apparently a good owner while serving here, has already managed to put the plaster on the stove that her mother cleaned and prepared cocoa for the children. If I offer you my help, you will win. I don't refuse. Valerie spoke calmly. But the answer to this question was felt. For him, it is extremely important. I am not going to refuse. Marina tried to smile and was afraid of his response. She had just explained to this man that perhaps he would not think about that. He asked these questions, and he did not want to think about such subtle matters because he started calling and talking to one of her friends or another. Marina caught the essence of these conversations only in passing. It seemed to her that not only did her head hurt, but she literally broke. Even as she formulated her thoughts, the woman just wanted to sit at the kitchen table, bowing her head. Head in your hands and wait for Valera's verdict. Everything is fine. The man smiled after a quarter of an hour. We decided everything. Don't worry. Marina was too tired to react emotionally, but she still couldn't help but try to find out who these mysterious people are and what they really decided. That we are my friends. I decided that I couldn't handle this alone and asked my friends for help. Among them is a good lawyer who is currently working somewhere at the city headquarters. But that's not important or relevant to the case, so he pointed it out to me. The option that tomorrow will come true, whether his Mikhail wants it or not, he will be able to keep the apartment he bought, and in exchange he will transfer half of this housing to his children. So it turns out that everyone wins. If he knows what we know about that apartment, then resistance will be useless in your situation. It is much more profitable to get a full apartment than two halves. So competent comrades will explain to you what comrades. Marina thought that she had lost something. My comrades tomorrow, they will be Nastya Misha, and she will stay with he before the notary arrives, and I'm also going to talk to the hook door itself, otherwise it might work. So you'll have to go as a witness, and they don't like that very much. Trying to imagine what would happen there, but Valera quickly crossed the kitchen and hugged the woman tightly to her chest. Well, that's it. Calm down too much. Children in life? For his sake, at least control yourself. They need a healthy and happy mother, and I will help you in everything I can. Valera cried, asked for affection from an almost unknown man, but little by little she relaxed in his warm arms and calmed down completely, trusting in such a strong and truly reliable hug. How good. It is not suitable for all problems. They can be solved as long as there is life on Earth. Valera stepped back. Marina took half a step and almost moaned. She didn't want this incredible man to leave today or tomorrow or ever. When she managed to convert attached to him in the morning, Marina received from Valeric an SS in which he wished her, "Have a good day, and I said that your colleagues remember everything today. I will definitely talk to Mikhail. And if she doesn't have some urgent need at the hospital and shouldn't show up, that's not the case. Thank him for coming after you had an intimate conversation. Misha himself better be solving the problems he caused with his own promiscuity, and she already has enough to do at home." Vadim was still sick. Luckily, his temperature had not risen. It was already so strong that Misha called himself at around 1:30 in the afternoon, immediately leaving the place. Marina began to blame for the fact that in the World Cup the truth was that she allowed herself to allow herself as long as her husband is in the hospital with a heart attack because of her fault. She also has lovers and drags them to the apartment with my children. You are a faithful wife. Seriously, don't be ashamed. Before my eyes you will see. Marina raised her eyebrows. She didn't know she should respond to such an inflamed speech, and she did the only thing she could think of. In his opinion, before that he hung up the phone and warned him that it would be harmful to him. The bottom line is that you should hook him hard since he is very worried, apparently about an affair with apartments. The armed forces achieved it successfully. They just need to wait for Valera's visit to finally clarify everything. The man arrived in the afternoon, and by Valeric's triumphant look it was clear that he won, and lo and behold, they forced him to form the Navy strength and sign them correctly. Not for nothing did he pay the notary. Everything turned out like it did for me. I already told you. Now you and your children are the rightful owners of this apartment. You know, she didn't want to admit that she had simply missed the opportunity to talk seriously about this topic and plan her. Misha's actions hurt her heart so much. They left a wound so unhealed that it was difficult for the young woman to regain her senses. Marina sank into a chair that was near the table and pressed her temples with her cold fingers. Now she must do something. But what should she say to this kind person who is in front of her now? She needs to make an effort. She needs to pull herself together. But her thoughts are scattered somewhere. She cannot believe that Valera has understood everything correctly. He leaned slightly towards Marina, who was sitting in the chair. VD. There was so much tenderness and care in this simple gesture that she cried again. But this time they were tears of relief with his help. The accumulated pain that poisoned and Valera left the young woman's soul, and Valera managed. Married months later, even the woman's parents knew little about how their romance was developing, except that Valera immediately became the indispensable companion of her beloved. He was with her everywhere, at school, at her children's workplace, and on the road. She, in the store and in the kitchen, became Marina's shadow with her consent. Of course, she had never done this before. I never felt so protected before. No one cared about her that much. Misha didn't let herself be known in any way except to pay alimony at the beginning. He tried to prove to the woman that she was wrong about everything. And in general, she was the first to cheat on him with a colleague. But Valera simply spoke to her like a man, and the dialogue ended there. Mikhail avoided communicating with Marina's new husband and therefore quietly did what was asked of him. A year later, a third baby appeared in the family, a charming and smelly girl, who was called Mashenka, but most of the time the rest of the family, young and old, simply called her Marina Vladimirovna. She was a serious girl about Misha's life, just in fits and starts. From mutual acquaintances after the heart attack, he never fully recovered. It took a lot of energy for a man's lover to abandon him after a while to maintain his health, because instead of a successful in all respects and completely healthy middle-aged man, she got a sick old man. And Marina. He couldn't blame her at all, because that woman did not swear eternal love to him. So everything was quite natural. She was just looking for someone who would give her a beautiful life. And no more than that. Every night Valera took the family. She sat in the minibus and they went for a walk. No one was happier those nights than Marina. She finally learned to breathe deeply and gain trust in her life partner, and that's already a lot. For any woman, it is not.